Thank you, everyone. Well, we're a little bit delayed, but you know what? I've got such important people on this panel that I'm going to have the full hour. So we're not going to shortchange you in any way, shape, or form. I'm very pleased to moderate this particular session. It's a topic that is extremely debatable. It's extremely valuable. It's extremely worth discussing as lawyers. And I think that this is a tremendous opportunity to hear from some of the leaders of some of our most significant companies here in India. So let me set the scene for you, because we obviously are not going to talk about ESG as a whole, because that's a very big topic. We are genuinely trying to focus on how ESG is currently managed, and what the role of our general counsels, our chief lawyers within organizations are in fact doing in relation to ESG leadership. So, as I said, I've got amazing panel members, but just to set the scene a little bit, for those of you that may not be as familiar, so ESG is environmental, social, and governance. And actually, it was first coined back in 2006 by the United Nations Principles. So it goes back a long way. But ESG isn't just a tick-the-box exercise, and I know that many of you here are aware of the Indian markets regulator, SEBI, who has required, in fact mandated, that the top 1,000 companies by market capitalization must disclose their ESG activities under the BRSR report. That is one element, but frankly, from a global standpoint, ESG is a lot more. ESG, in fact, it's a pivotal long-term sustainability mechanism for businesses. It encompasses all manner of value in the whole life cycle of the business, starting from the board level all the way down to the on-the-ground activities that the business undertakes. It is important to the board directors, it's important to stakeholders, it's important to shareholders. Most importantly, it's important to customers, clients, and employees. So this is why this is resonating so widely and broadly within the market today. It effectively measures the impact that a business has on the world. It can't get more fundamental than that. And it looks at effectively traceability through supply chains. It looks at the way we treat our people, both in terms of internal and external. And it really looks at our reputation, because if we don't get our ESG principles right, then it can be an incredible damaging element that keeps business back from what it is striving to do. So it is quite broad. And in that respect, it's a little bit challenging for companies to grasp, because where do you start? Who should be responsible? How much resources should I be putting into this? And in the conversations I've been having outside, Indian companies, I think, are sort of only really grappling with it. But here, as I said, we have a number of experts who are also members of global companies, and therefore they can bring some of that learning from their other colleagues across their business network. As a firm, we've actually, Baker McKenzie, been a leader in relation to ESG. We set up the first climate change practice almost 20 years ago, and we work with companies in terms of designing ESG programs, looking at ESG risks and opportunities in terms of their acquisition strategies, and also investigating, spending time on governance to make sure that when things go wrong, we understand why, we understand who's responsible, and we understand how we can do it better. So with that, let me turn to the panel. What I'd like you to do, all of you, if I may ask, is to talk about some of the ESG priorities that you see as probably the key priorities for companies today. So maybe, Mira, maybe I can start with you.
Thank you. The key priorities I will say, from the company board perspective, is mainly like initially always been the governance. But now this the arena of governance has increased and it has become the ESG. So ESG, like it is not only about the climate, it is about the social also, and companies are doing their bit, and boards are like pushing the managements to do their social bit also, and at the same time there are a lot of buzz within the corporates to do something about the environment also, and they are like no plastic in the offices and all these are the small issues, but waste management, but they have the, I think, multifold effect overall in the society. And at the same time, like I'll tell you about my organization, I have been attending a lot of ESG panels and all that. So it was always in my mind, like, why don't we have a ESG committees? So I have put that idea to my people, in Moscow, that we should have such kind of a committee. So which they have agreed, they're saying, okay, we will make a cross-functional teams. It is not only the GCs, it will be the marketing head, it will be the supply chain head, and they have actually formulated the ESG committee, which is like audit committee and ethics committee and all. They meet whenever there is a board meeting. There is and at the same time we are looking at to incorporate in the boards the ESG specialist. So ESG specialist, and at the same time we are looking at doing some kind of a training to the board members. And I would say, if we want to make the difference in the world, it is not only the top to bottom approach; it has to be a bottom to top approach also. So these are the few priorities which we are looking at this moment. And I think India, we have started with all this, and I think in the year when business responsibility report has started, it's been now more than 12 years, and we are talking about all these things. But where we are, that we have to see what effect we can bring on the board, and what kind of difference we can make. And when there was a meeting, I think only China and India was reluctant to meet the target of this reduction in the temperature, and they say that we need more time, and coal consumption is still at very high levels in India. So there is a lot to do, and I think ESG is a way of life going forward, and every individual has that responsibility to make its own bit. It is not only the company boards or corporates can do everything. No, every human being has to do their bit.
With that, Surinder, I know you already do your bit because Colgate-Palmolive puts the smiles on children's faces around the world. But from a corporate perspective, how have you rolled out the ESG initiatives, particularly here in India?
Sure. Before I come to that, I would like to just explain what we as a corporate believe in when it comes to ESG. We have a very strong belief that all the corporates are here to make profits, right? But we at Colgate also believe how that profit comes is also very, very important and critical. And we as being a multinational company, we have a global ESG strategy. In India, we didn't have a formal ESG strategy as such, but whatever we had being done at a global level, we were also trying to replicate the same in India. Having said that, we thought that it is very, very important to have CP India is a listed entity. SEBI and then not only SEBI but also the environment all around were looking at companies more closely, what companies are doing when it comes to ESG. So we thought of, proactively adopting a ESG framework at CP India. How we can, what we are doing, bring it together and present it to the outside world. Coming to the ESG, some of the key ESG priorities which the company is looking at, I think being a Colgate toothpaste manufacturing organization, we introduce a lot of plastic. And so plastic obviously becomes a very, very key priority for CP India. We thought that, at the first step, globally, we were looking how we can make our toothpaste tube recyclable. If you know, the tube is actually a multi-layer plastic and it's not easily recyclable. So what we thought is, to introduce a recyclable toothpaste tube, and this first in the world kind of thing, initiative. What we have also done proactively is to make this technology available to everyone, including our competition, because we don't want this environment is a key priority for everyone and it should not be restricted only to Colgate. So, having said that, its technology is coming at a cost, but doesn't matter. We have started phasing it out. Almost 40% of our tubes now are recyclable, and by 2025 we have a target of making all our tubes recyclable. Having said that, we are also looking at government to create a recyclable infrastructure in the country, which is, as of now, is not in a very great state, unlike the Western world, where the recyclable facilities are widely and easily available. So that's number one priority. And number two is relating to water. We are doing a lot of things like we have 4 manufacturing plants in India. 2 of our manufacturing plants are water positive. Other 2 are also likely to be water positive soon. Waste management is another area which the company is focusing. All 4 plants are, zero waste plant certified for Colgate Palmolive India. So these are some of the key priorities which we are looking at. Having said that, it is not easy, and you rightly said that companies have been mandated to come out with the BRSR framework by SEBI. We have proactively started doing it, but the amount of efforts it takes for companies to collate that kind of data is not easy. Companies have to make use of technology so that the information can keep flowing throughout the year, and you are not struggling to collate the data at the last minute when it is time to prepare the report. So I think it's time for companies to think and adopt a robust BRSR and ESG framework within the organization. One more point which I feel is very, very important is a uneven level playing field for listed and unlisted organizations. I think while ESG framework has been made voluntary by Ministry of Corporate Affairs for large unlisted companies, but I think it will be it makes sense now, considering that ESG is important for one and all, as you rightly mentioned. It makes sense to make it mandatory for everyone.
Thank you, Surender. And in fact, that's a really good point, because you're right, getting a level playing field is important so that we are not forcing companies to undertake reporting, which is significant resources, money, time, etc., at the expense of others that perhaps are not required to provide that type of disclosure. But keep in mind, ESG is not just about, talking about what you do and making sure that you're marked on it. It's also realizing the value of what you do and doing it well, because it really is driving value from a corporate level. In terms of attracting investment, companies are really focused, particularly PE houses, investment funds, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds. They're all looking at ESG capabilities in terms of determining where they invest. So, while it may seem to be a bit of a drain on resources, there is also a value to be gained. So with that, I'm just going to pass to Sheil. Sheil, you're in the real estate industry sector, and you're a very large global player. What is JLL doing, and where do you see the priorities in terms of ESG for companies?
Yeah, thanks, Mini. So, primarily, the if you look at of JLL since 1760, since it was founded, was to shape the future of real estate, right, for a better world. So, when you talk about better world in the current environment, environment is a big concern. Therefore, all the speakers prior to our session spoke about environment being a fundamental concern. And jail also has been one of the advocates and signatory to the UN Charter, and it's one of the prime movers. So essentially, we are not looking at ESG as something which is what we internalize, but it's something how we help other companies to internalize. And in fact, immediately after the last conference in Davos, where the emphasis was on ESG practices, we have actually put on the ESG governance board, right, and appointed a chief sustainability officer with practice areas across the globe, right? So, I mean, when we look at the whole life cycle of a real estate complex, a building, everything that you see, say, if you take the example of Gurgaon, almost all the buildings which are currently up and running, upscale buildings, primarily are certified from a building efficiency, green initiative, zero carbon emission perspective, right? So, and a second aspect about governance in India, and I forget the number of committees that I sit on as the General Counsel in India, whether it is the uh, ESG Governing Council, or for that matter, Code of Business Ethics, or the statutory boards. But one of the primary thing which JLL emphasizes on is to for the General Counsel to have the conversation with the business leaders at the time when they go to the market with regard to their products and services. Right? And that itself, over the last 5 years, I've seen has resulted into a lot of sensitivity getting gained, even in business. You picked up a very important point. We go for mergers, acquisitions, we look at legal, financial due diligence. JLL, when it goes for acquisition, does a ESG due diligence as well, right? So this is part and embedded in our process. And I believe that if we have to continue shaping the future of real estate, then we will have to continue working on ESG to be adopted by other organizations rather than internally. The thought that I began with.
It's an excellent point. And Sheil, you and I have spoken many times before. ESG is an interesting way to express these priorities, and it actually cuts across a lot of geopolitical issues. So, it doesn't matter whether you're speaking about ESG in China or here in India or elsewhere in the world, it actually resonates in a way that perhaps some of the risk elements of ESG may be a little bit more polarizing. So, Rajiv, I would like you to also share your thoughts in terms of the priorities of companies in terms of ESG. But, from a services and consulting industry sector, you have so many young talent who are at the core of Accenture. And these people, they have huge expectations on what you should be doing in terms of ESG. So please share.
First of all, thanks for having me on the panel. And this is my second panel of the week, and somehow I managed to be the last in the draw in both. So obviously, the Lord of my thunder has been diffused by the time the mic is being handed over to me. But I'll make honest attempt to supplement the very illuminating thoughts shared by my co-panelists. As a concept, I think ESG is multidimensional, right? And as boards, also I think you have to look at it in a multidimensional way. And I'm sort of going to struggle with my words, but the point I'm trying to make is that as a board, you have to look at the spectrum at 3 tiers. The first tier is the global imperative. And that comes from the sustainability development goals cast by United Nations, right? And there are 17 of them. And as we all know, there are subset, there's 169 targets under those 17 goals. So as a board, you have to principally look at what is the global landscape of ESG. And choose, I know from my notes, I'm not that sharp anymore, but the first principle is the 5 P's of sustainability, which is planet, people, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And then as a board, one has to then look at how you're going to stack these 17 in terms of your first priority, second priority, and then where we have indirect intervention. And if you allow me, Mini, then I will just speak about how we have stacked those 17 as essential. So first of all, the highest priority is SDGs for Accenture's gender equality, which is the 5th in the tier. Decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. The next is the 10th on the list of 17, which is reduced inequalities. 12th is responsible consumption and production, climate action, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals. So these are our highest priority SDGs. And then we follow it up with a second priority for us is good health and well-being, quality education, clean water, affordable and clean energy. And SDGs where we have an indirect impact, no poverty, zero hunger, sustainable cities and communities, life below water, and life on land. But these are the 17, and I can speak in detail about what are those targets that we picked against each. But I'll leave that for now in case needed. I'll come back to it. And then, of course, there is this, like I said, the second spectrum, which is generic. Like I said, I'm going to struggle with words. It's not generic, but from my perspective, it's generic because this is the PS RS standards, right? Which is applicable to the top 1,000 companies, like you said. And again, I just want to make sure that I kind of read those principles because effective 22-23, it's mandatory for top 1,000 companies by market capitalization to report these 9 principles. And those 9 principles are businesses should conduct and govern themselves with integrity and in a manner that's ethical, transparent, and accountable. Second principle is businesses should provide goods and services in a manner that's sustainable and safe. The third is businesses should respect and promote the well-being of all employees, including those in the value chain. And of course, there are under them essential indicators and leadership indicators. There is a subset. There are 140 questions. Fourth principle is businesses should respect the interest of and responsive to all its stakeholders. The fifth principle is businesses should respect and promote human rights. Sixth is business should respect and make efforts to protect and restore the environment. Seventh principle is businesses, when engaging in influencing public and regulatory policy, should do so in a manner that's responsible and transparent. Eighth is businesses should promote inclusive growth and equitable development. And ninth and last principle is business should engage with and provide value to their consumers in a responsible manner. So I would say this is the landscape as SEBI envisages in ESG. But if you look at these, like I said, essential indicators and leadership indicators, it encompasses all the spectrum of ESG. And then coming specific to my industry, which is the third element of how a board needs to view, is for Accenture, we have now adopted the last year 360-degree value meters, which essential ingredients of ESG are all baked in. So we report in this 360-degree value to our clients, to our employees, and to the outside world. We have very important 6 elements: financial, experience, client. But then we also have inclusion and diversity, talent, and sustainability as what we as company report to everybody. And then, like I said, specific to what Accenture has done is we picked up certain priorities for ourselves based on our industry requirements, and those are for us climate change and carbon emissions, right? And we are now 100% renewable energy in India, 97% globally. And of course, we are also very conscious of tracking and disclosing greenhouse gas. So that's one. 2 is community giving, which is basically our CSR, making others for skills on skills where they can succeed. And we have a full strategy on community, which is disaster relief, and like I said, skills to succeed program. The next is important, very contextual, which is data privacy and cybersecurity, which is basically addressing our legal and ethical responsibilities with regard to privacy and security of personal and business data. So that's the third priority we've taken as a company. And of course, as you know, this is very important for us because we deal with data, right? The fourth is employee well-being and engagement. Basically looking at prioritizing mental and physical well-being of our people, respecting individuals. We have strong policies for that. You obviously been advising us through the years, and of course, to state the obvious, complying with labor legislations, etc. Next is, which is important for all companies, I suppose, is ethics and anti-corruption, which is where your firm has helped us a lot over the years, which is requiring our business partners, people, and suppliers to comply with corruption laws everywhere we do business. Human rights is the next priority we have, which is basically, this is a wide spectrum: labor and management relations, occupational health and safety, equal opportunities, freedom of association, child labor, forced and compulsory labor, etc. And then we have inclusion, diversity, and equal opportunities. Our target is 50-50 men to women ratio by 2025. We are already at 47%. Within the legal team, we always been close to about 60% thereabouts in our team. Public policy and advocacy, which is using our platform to advocate for progress across ESG values. Responsible buying, to making sure that we are working with suppliers and wider ecosystem to advance our key priorities around ESG, inclusion, diversity, equality, and social innovation. The next is we make responsible investments. So we will invest in companies which are conscious of their ESG responsibilities. Followed by responsible technology and innovations, innovating ethically and exploring the extended and potentially unintended consequences of new technology. Societal impact, which is creation of employment and skill opportunities, and talent attraction, retention, and development, which is basically GRI 404 training and education. And that's why, and of course, we have to attract the right talent to meet our clients' needs and developing and training our people. And the last priority, and of course there are more, but the last important one is waste, including e-waste. So a couple of things. We recycle all our e-waste. We make sure that our vendors are savvy and comply to laws. We are reducing our waste to landfill as far as practically feasible, and looking at optimizing new waste to recycle. So these are some of the industry-specific priorities that we have taken as an industry.
No, thank you. And you're right. And you know what? As management consultants, they need to be doing before they can advise. And as you can hear, Accenture have definitely been doing, and I think it's very important to share that experience because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to learn from each other and we want to see what the benchmarking is and be able to sort of utilize what works for our companies, our industries, in a way that, again, captures the value. So I do want to now pivot a little bit more to do with the role of lawyers, particularly the GCs, within companies, because companies have dealt with ESG differently. So some companies have set up ESGs like a separate department. And I know in India that can be very, attractive because you can have that department deal with the 7 requirements if you're a listed entity. But actually, ESG really does need to be much more holistic and capture, as Rajiv just mentioned, a wide range of priorities of the business. So it isn't, it isn't the old-fashioned compliance, although it incorporates many of the compliance frameworks. It isn't just about human resources or the employment imperatives, although ESG captures a wide range of those issues as diversity and inclusion, etc. It is actually the business strategy as a whole. So I'm going to now sort of take people out in order. It's going to shock them. So Rajiv, I might come back to you very quickly. But let me start, Surrender, maybe with you. Talk us through in terms of where lawyers, in-house lawyers, fit in terms of driving and leading the ESG strategy.
So, Mini, as you just talked about it, ESG first started as a voluntary compliance, and companies started becoming more and more conscious of doing something for the environment. And over a period of time, as you must be also talked about it, regulators are also looking at it and trying to introduce the formal ESG framework for the companies in the form of the RSI. So the boards and the companies are now looking at it as not only the voluntary, but it is a must-to-do area where we have to, and then looking at it as exactly from the same lens of compliance that we should not miss on this particular important area. And when it comes to compliance, I think the GC is the one the entire organization look at it. So the role of GC becomes very, very important and critical in terms of ensuring and advising the top leadership team. And if you are a member of the board, to the board of directors, what kind of compliances are required and what we are doing in this space. So as a GC, in my organization, myself along with my CFO, who is also a full-time director on the board, two of us jointly, sit together, chart out the strategy, how we are going to collect the information. We connect with all we have formed a task force because this is an area which will touch each and every part of your organization. And no one person can do and collect the information and do the compliance. So we have formed a task force representing one key member from each function. It is their responsibility that the information is provided and collected in the manner it is sought in the framework, and then put it up accordingly. So we do have regular meetings. We ensure that data comes on time, and if there at GC, it's my responsibility to ensure if there are any interpretation issues, that what is required and how much information is required. We do provide those clarifications from time to time, and then put the information in a manner which can be put up to the board and then to the external world in the form. So I think it is important and critical. You need to continuously on top of it, and a lot of coordination and a lot of interpretation clarifications need to be given from time to time.
No, it's exactly right. And where you hear about these greenwashing cases, I'm sure all of you know that with ESG there is also a corresponding risk in terms of claims. The key failures are around not actually having the evidence or the data to support what it is that you're saying that you're doing. So when you talk about making sure that key members of the organisation at Colgate-Palmolive, prioritise and think about it this way, you're also actually making sure that you're putting that evidence together in order to withstand those types of claims. Am I right?
Absolutely right. So, as I mentioned also earlier, that the flow of information has to be regular, and it has to be there in the form it is mandated in the framework. So, and it should not be that you do it only for a specific time period. It has to be continuously flowing, and it becomes a repository of data over a period of time, to which you can at any point in time go and create. So, you have started your year, and it's a journey. I mean, once you start this journey, it will just take you forward.
It is a journey. Mira, I'm going to come back to you in terms of, your role as chief executive of your organisation. Where do you, as a leader, get involved in terms of ESG?
See, like, I feel like when we talk about anti-corruption and bribery compliances, it is a big risk. And I would not say like the main greenwashing comes in that compliance. So if you are running a business and you have to run it successfully, there are certain compromises which every corporate needs. So how to get rid of all those things? Because if you are doing a greenwashing, if some investors coming tomorrow in your company and invest, and they come to know when if they are intelligent enough. So then you have a reputational loss and other losses also in fact. And I feel that this is one of the biggest challenge which I think every GC and even as a business leader faces. And even at the board level also, huge discussions happen within the four walls, like how to curb this compliance issue. So I feel this is one of the key challenges when we are talking about the compliance and the ESG. And yes, like Surinder said, like non-listing company should also be there. So I feel like now from 100 to 1,000 companies, listed companies, SABI has reached, but it took them I think approximately 10 years to reach that level. So, but I have seen like the private limited companies, the startups are more conscious about the compliances than the listed companies because they are inviting the investments and they know like even if there is a small loophole they caught, so there is no like there is big no to that. And I'll tell you one example. Like I am on a sexual harassment committee in one of the startups, and there is one complaint filed, and the whole management was so panicky. They're like, we want a very genuine report on this. We don't want that if it is if the complaint has been made in the management person, so it should not be, there is no discount to that. So we can live without that person, but we don't want any like because the main concern they have like if tomorrow investor will come and they will see our file, what will happen? So they have that kind like they're so conscious about all these things. So that is a good thing also because it's an era of startups and entrepreneurship, and people are conscious about all those compliances and they are doing I think better. Work in the ESG field than the well-established organizations.
Actually, that's a perfect point because there's nothing like director liability risk that can really focus on getting things done right.
I would say like director liability thing, but how much directors will be liable actually, practically speaking? Because they're like, we have put the due diligence and this is best of my knowledge and all that, and then they'll just excuse themselves. Like how much director liability we can actually put on these? Like it's okay, like there is a director liabilities in the Companies Act, but they can come out of that because that is best of their knowledge. They have put their prudence and all that. So like how much courts will get into like whether it was actually they know or not like that.
it's a market risk that is actually more powerful than court risk. So what we see are, in fact, directors and management being held responsible when there are scandals. Reputation is damaged and the share price drops. So actually, forget about the courts. I talk about ESG as being sort of leading the way beyond law. It's actually the law is trying to catch up, not quite yet, and but the requirements of ESG, particularly around governance, and that's what I'd like to come to. So Rajiv, I'm coming back to you now. Sheil, please be patient. I'll be with you shortly. Let's talk about governance, because that is, in terms of GC responsibility, you are the gatekeeper. You're the absolute foundation of good governance structures. That is where the company depends on you. Now, governance is at the heart of good ESG. In fact, if you don't have the governance right, the rest of it will also suffer. Tell us a bit about your views in terms of where the governance element. I just don't think people are paying close enough attention to that necessarily across the board. Tell us about what your experience is.
I think this issue as Accenture, perhaps not as put it in, because as you know, as well as anybody else, many executive advisors, that we have a told from the top approach to all things compliance, right? So when you look at Accenture, while legal is kind of so-called gatekeeper, but not necessarily, because for us, the entire leadership and all of our workforce comes together when it comes to compliance and governance. So it's not just my job, right? It's a job of everybody in the company. But that's who we are. That's what Accenture is. Coming to your sort of question about role of GC in kind of ESG world or universe, I look at it in two ways. One is a strategic role that we play, and the other is a more operational role, which is maybe when you talk about governance, it's more kind of day-to-day looking at whether whatever we're doing in the field of ESG is being sort of looked at in a compliant manner or not, right? So on the strategic level, my role, or anybody, all the GCs in the room, I think our role is, first of all, helping identify the risks of ESG in the organization, right? Now, e-waste could be very important for an IT company, but it may not be for a mining company, for instance. And likewise, pollution in a mining company may be relevant hugely for them, but maybe less relevant. You know what I'm saying? So, you're kind of mapping what is ESG essential for the organization. Then, of course, the second strategic role is, monitoring industry-specific best practices, right? And believe it or not, we have a standing call every week with some of us lawyers. We speak about ESG every week for 30 minutes, I think on Friday. For what it's worth, we gather news around the world, we sort of share experiences. So as a legal team, we are quite invested in ESG. I'm not saying we are experts, we're not there, but it's a continuing learning process. So monitoring industry-specific best practices. And of course, keeping, pace with the evolving law and landscape is always, the organization looks illegal to do that. And of course, when you talk of governance, of course, reporting requirements. Reporting requirements are not standardized globally or not standardized across industry, but nevertheless, whatever the reporting requirements are to your jurisdiction or to whatever you signed up for, making sure that those are monitored and met in a timely manner. And of course, continuing to analyze law for being future ready. And I think I'll be remiss if I don't mention as to what we do on the operational side to ensure continuous governance, right? And I'll take some examples under ESG for all three of them. Let's take the example of environment. When you take renewable energy, now we are 100% renewable energy, right? But when it comes to legal, what is our role really? I mean, we are not negotiating with the power company in the sense of buying power. We are negotiating the contract, right? So our role is looking at the PPA, making sure all the RECs, the renewable energy certificates that we procure, or what is the regulation around them, etc. Correct. So that'll be our operational role. We look at waste management, right? We want to ensure that our suppliers adhere to our policies, which is so therefore we are helping with due diligence, right? So that's another level of governance that we provide to our ecosystem. Now, if you look at indirectly, managing natural resources or managing carbon emissions, Scope 1, 2, 3. Now, my role is very indirect, right? So I don't procure this, energy efficient buildings. Somebody in the real estate is dealing with shield to do that. But that's why, but then responsible travel, which is one of our priorities. Our role is, if you look at, when we talk about the digital collaboration. Now, in India, it can be a very regulated field, right? So we are, obviously advising on regulations or telecom regulations is what I meant, or network enablement to sort of, to enable us to do that digital collaboration, right? Or on the other side, responsible travel. My responsibility is that I don't just get on the plane every time, on small issues. So I have to become disciplined, and my team and my colleagues have to become disciplined. Let's not travel unless absolutely needed, right? So that's another indirect sort of role. Look at social inclusion and diversity. Our role is that in our legal group, we are continuing to, stay ahead of the curve. Because in legal, we can do that. Legal is leading in terms of diversity across the organization, in terms of percentage. All of us are doing well. I'm not saying legal is an outlier. All of us are doing well. Legal always does best. And then, of course, we have indirect role in drafting policies on diversity and understanding what the law is, involving governance around some of the inclusion and diversity topics. Now, engaging with communities. We as legal group have taken a number of sessions over the last year or two with our community partners, educating them on various things like gender equality, child safety, data privacy, and because these are all NGOs, they don't have in-house expertise, right, for some of these technical topics. So we have picked some of those topics up, so trying to train our CSR partners, becoming more efficient in some of this knowledge, right? And then, of course, labor rights, which is, really the legal sort of scope clearly, advising on what is modern slavery, what are the working hours, what is the responsibilities of AI. We were speaking in the morning in terms of people matters, right? So all of that. And of course, in terms of governance, if you look at ensuring diversity, like I said, we are much above 50%. Then looking at all the spectrum of ethics and compliance trainings, we craft trainings, of course, in association with firms like yours. We ensure our people are trained from time to time. Likewise, for code of business conduct, how we sort of make it simple, more logical for non-lawyers to sort of understand and be digest and put that to practice. Again, same thing with anti-corruption policies. It's legal job to kind of put that framework in place. And of course, overall compliance. In India, I keep putting this number. In our operation across 11 states that we operate in now, believe it or not, there are 5,000 line items of compliance that I need to have. 5,000, which is the laundry list of compliances that I need to carry out. So making sure that Accenture as an ethical company, which wants to be compliant to laws, be managing those compliances and making sure we stay compliant. So that's another sort of example of how we should help with governance.
Thank you. Yes.
Just to
Yes.
add to that,
Yes.
but I think all these good, best governed companies are not doing it now. they have been doing it many years for a long
Before
time.
they even called it ESG, right?
Absolutely. And ESG framework has just helped them to bring all the what they have been doing together and then show it to the outside world. But yeah, and any best governed company will have been doing it and will continue to do it.
Well, that's yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
I just want to add on the diversity. Like the organizations are saying that we are working in diversity. It is not always a gender diversity. So a lot of organizations are doing very good work, like Microsoft. They have included disabled and specially aid people in their management teams, in their training programs, and they're doing their bit in a very good way. And so I think the corporates need to expand their horizon to include all those people also. Maybe they should have some mandate that we will recruit the people from the B towns or C towns also, and at the same time they should have diverse, like differently able people in their system, so that then it will be a true diverse corporate. This is my opinion.
No, I think and these are excellent examples of companies really living and deriving that value. Sheil, I'm going to give you the last word because you've been so patient. What I'd like you to tell us a little bit about, though, this is all, we've talked about all the good things that companies are doing, but things do go wrong. And one of the litmus tests for good ESG, in fact, the MSCI, which rates companies, listed companies around the world in terms of ESG performance, as either leaders or laggards, they look at when things go wrong, what do companies do? And Neera touched on this because it's the conduct of investigations into things that go wrong and understanding what has happened and how it can be prevented from happening again. I know that your background from a forensic accounting perspective, you're uniquely positioned. Tell us about that side of governance.
Yeah, thanks, Vinny. So primarily at JLL, we don't, and I can share my broader experience also, we don't consider compliance, governance, investigation to be one-off events. These are continuous process for us. And this is a process which has been set in motion, not now, what you said, but over a course of, if I can speak with, for JLL's example, maybe 100 years. So, I mean, and there are, what is the role of a general counsel when a shit hits the fan, right? You objectively, independently do a fact investigation, not opinions. Because a lot of times what happens is that there are stakeholders who may have opinions while what is to be established when investigation goes away. So we spend a lot of time doing that, and we don't believe in investigation which is confession based, but mostly forensic investigation, right? And that's where I think one of the cornerstone has been that JLL has been so far globally, regionally, or in the country not indicted in any investigation that it has conducted over the course of at least last 20-25 years. And that is testimony to the robustness of our investigation process. As I said, it's an evolving process for organizations like JLL. And when I say it's an evolving process, it's a question not about de minimis legal requirements. It's a question of that aspirational thing. And those aspirational things were conceptualized not now, but maybe, as I said, in the 260 years history of JLL.
I think that's a perfect note to finish on. This has been extremely valuable for me to participate with this wonderful panel. Thank you to the audience for remaining with us and not being tempted to go off into another breakout session. On behalf of myself, I'd like to thank Rajiv, Sheil, Surrender and Neera for their valuable contributions. Thank you.